The message arrived at 11:43 in the morning. I was standing at the entrance to Gracewood Memorial Chapel, one hand on the door, the other holding my phone. I had driven 4 hours that morning. I had not slept well. My coat still smelled like the rain that had started an hour outside of the city and had not stopped. My sister's name on the screen. A single message. Don't come. You're not welcome here. I stood at that door for a long moment. I read the message twice. Then I put my phone in my coat pocket, and I walked in. The chapel's foyer held perhaps 30 people, cousins, neighbors, family, friends, the particular gathering that forms around a loss. The sound when I entered was the low, continuous murmur of a room full of people speaking quietly. Several faces turned toward the door when it opened. The murmur stopped. Not all at once, gradually, table by table, person by person, as recognition spread from the entrance inward. I had not seen most of these people in years. Some of them knew the situation between my sister and me. All of them, now, knew I had walked through a door I had been told not to open. My sister Diana appeared from the left side of the room. She moved quickly, not running, but with the directness of someone who had seen something they needed to address immediately. She reached me near the entrance and positioned herself so her back was to the room. "I told you not to come," she said. Her voice was a whisper, but it was not soft. I looked at her. Then I reached into my bag. I took out a single document, folded in thirds, and I placed it on the small table beside the entrance, the one that held the memorial program and a framed photograph of our mother. Diana looked at the document. She looked at me. She picked it up. She unfolded it. And the color left her face so completely and so quickly that the woman standing nearest to us, our cousin Patricia, reached out and touched her arm. What was written on that paper changed everything that happened in that chapel for the rest of the afternoon. Before I tell you what it said, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what country you are watching from. Now, let's begin. My name is Claire Morrison. I am 36 years old. And I want to tell you about my mother before I tell you about the document. Margaret Morrison was 68 years old when she died. She had been a librarian for 31 years, the kind of librarian that becomes an institution in a small community, the person children remember decades later as the one who put the exact right book in their hands at the exact right moment. She was precise and warm and had the specific quality of paying full attention that libraries at their best model and that she embodied completely. She raised Diana and me in a house on the east side of Millbrook, Ohio. Our father left when I was 8 and Diana was 13, not dramatically, just gradually, until the gradual became permanent. And from that point it was the three of us, navigating the particular economy of a single parent's household with the resilience that children develop when they understand that resilience is required. Diana, being older, became a certain kind of person in those years, organized, managing, the one who handled logistics and stepped into the gaps that our father's absence created. I was younger and less useful and spent more time in my room with books than in the kitchen with the practical business of the household. We were close in the way sisters are close when they grow up in the same difficult circumstances. We were also always different. Diana moved toward control of situations, and I moved toward understanding of them, and as adults those tendencies had pulled us in directions that made us, in some fundamental way, harder for each other to recognize. I had moved away from Millbrook when I was 24. To be honest with you about the distance between my sister and me, I have to be honest about that. I left. Not because of Diana specifically, but because of a need I had to build my life in a place that was not the place I had grown up in, and the practical consequence of that departure was that Diana was present, and I was not. Diana had been there when our mother was diagnosed. Diana had been there through the treatment years, the appointments, the bad seasons, the better seasons, the final year. I had visited when I could. I had called. I had been present in the ways available to me at 4 hours distance, and a job I could not simply leave, and a life I had built that was real and full, and that I am not going to apologize for. But Diana had been there in ways I had not. And over time, the gap between those two kinds of presence had become, in Diana's accounting of things, a moral distinction, a judgment about who had shown up and who had not, with a conclusion about who deserved to be here now that she had made, without consulting me. She had not told me our mother's condition was terminal until 3 weeks before the end. She had not told me about the change in our mother's medication or the decision to transition to hospice. She had managed the information the way she managed everything, efficiently, with the authority of the person who was present and the assumption that the person who was not would receive what she decided to give. I had found out about the hospice transition from our cousin Patricia, who had assumed I knew. I had driven to Millbrook immediately. Our mother and I had 12 days together at the end. Those 12 days were not for Diana and me to resolve. They were for my mother and me, and I will not describe them here because they belong to us. What I will tell you is that on the 4th day, while Diana was at the pharmacy, my mother asked me to open the drawer of her bedside table. Inside was an envelope, sealed, with the name of her attorney, Robert Hanley, on the outside, and a note in my mother's handwriting. Call Robert when it's time. He has everything. I changed some things, my mother said. Her voice was tired but clear. Robert has the documents. Call him when you need to. Don't let Diana manage this alone. She looked at me with the specific quality of attention I remembered from childhood, the librarian's attention, full and directed. Promise me, she said. I promised. Robert Hanley called me on the morning of my mother's death. He had been my mother's attorney for 11 years. He said he was sorry for my loss and that he understood this was an extremely difficult time, but that my mother had left specific instructions about the timing of certain communications and that he needed to speak with me before the funeral arrangements were finalized. He told me that my mother had revised her will 8 months earlier. The revision named me as the sole executor of her estate. It also placed in my hands a sealed letter, a document my mother had written to her daughters, to be read in the presence of both of us, at or after the memorial service, before any estate matters were discussed or decided. Robert had a copy. He had also given me the original the previous day when I had visited his office. The document I placed on the table in the chapel foyer was both of these things, folded together. The first page of the will showing my role as executor, and the sealed letter addressed to my daughters, in my mother's handwriting, with the instruction, to be read when you are together. Diana held these papers for a long moment. Then she looked at me.
She changed it, she said.
Not a question. 8 months ago, I said. Diana looked at the sealed letter. She looked at the room, at the 30 people who were watching us, at the photograph of our mother on the table, at the chapel door behind me. Then she said something I had not expected. She said, "Okay." The memorial service was at 2 o'clock. I sat in the front row beside Diana. We did not speak during the service. We listened to the pastor, to the family friend who gave the remembrance, to the music our mother had specifically chosen. I looked at the photograph on the table, the one from her 60th birthday, in the garden, laughing at something, and I felt the specific weight of a grief that I had been carrying in one form or another for the 12 days since I understood it was coming. After the service, when the other mourners had moved to the reception in the adjacent room, Diana and I sat together in the nearly empty chapel. I opened the letter. I will not reproduce it in full. The words are my mother's and they belong to my sister and me. What I will tell you is that she had written it over the course of 2 months, revising it several times, with the specific care of someone who understood that she was writing the last thing she would say to the people she loved most and who wanted to say it accurately. She wrote about what she had seen in both of us, the specific gifts of each, the specific failures, the ways we had hurt each other over the years, and the ways we had loved each other despite those hurts. She wrote without flattery and without accusation, in the plain, honest voice that had always been hers. She wrote to Diana about the years of presence and what they had meant, and also about what they had cost, the controlling of information, the management of access, the decisions made without consultation that had left Claire feeling excluded not just from the practical business of the illness, but from the right to be present in her mother's dying. She wrote to me about the years of absence and what they had cost, not as condemnation but as honest accounting, the kind she believed we both deserved. And then she wrote one paragraph that I will share because I believe she intended it to be shared. I am not asking you to resolve everything. I am asking you to stay in the room with each other. The room is harder to leave than you think, and it is also the only place where anything real can happen between you. I have left the practical decisions to Claire because I trust her to make them carefully. I have left this letter to both of you because I trust you, together, more than I trust either of you alone. Diana was crying before the end.
So was I.
The estate was modest. Our mother had not been a wealthy woman. A librarian's salary, a small house, the particular accumulated objects of a careful and meaningful life. The process of settling it was not without difficulty. There were moments in the following months when Diana and I disagreed and had to find our way through the disagreement to something workable. But we found our way. We are not fully reconciled. I want to be honest about that because the easy ending of complete reconciliation would not be truthful, and my mother wrote her letter in a spirit of honesty that I want to honor. We are two people who are trying, who are staying in the room, who are calling each other occasionally and having conversations that are sometimes difficult and sometimes something closer to what we used to be. The house has been sorted. The objects have been distributed. There is a photograph of our mother, the 60th birthday one, in the garden, laughing in both of our homes now. I want to say something about the document. My mother gave it to me not as a weapon, and I did not use it as one. I placed it on that table because Diana needed to see, before the service began, that the situation was not what she had assumed, that I was not there in defiance of her wishes, but in fulfillment of our mother's. That the question of whether I was welcome was not, ultimately, Diana's to answer. My mother answered it 8 months before she died. She answered it in the way she answered everything that mattered to her, with words on a page, carefully chosen, preserved and distributed to the people who needed them. She put my name on a document. She put our names on a letter. She made sure we would be in the same room. I walked through a door I had been told not to open. She had made sure that door would open when I pushed it. That is what mothers do when they love their children enough to plan for the obstacles those children will put in each other's way. She planned. I walked in. We read the letter together. That was what she wanted.